that always gets me is the Rorqual and the Phoenix warping noise. Oh, I love that noise.
Dying to bring you the news, it's the New Eden Times News Network. This week I have a fantastic interview with a Nullsec miner named Kaine Atoel of the Sleep Reapers Alliance in Tenerife. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Kaine Atoel. I'm a member of the Sleep Reapers out in Tenerife. I'm primarily known for mining, all things mining. I kind of unofficially run a lot of our moon mining schedules and stuff, and do a lot of boosting in that. I'm our primary booster. Yeah, I am. That's about it. I don't really do much else. So this account, my main account, is only, I think, about a year, 14 months old. But I had a different account years ago that I played with for a long time, and then ended up leaving. And when I came back, I just decided to biomass it and start over. So pretty much always been a miner. I never really got into the big ships. I was mostly doing high sec mining on my old account, and I never really got super into all of the corp stuff and big fleet stuff, and so a lot of that's been a big learning experience for me. I was mostly a solo player back in the day, doing high sec stuff and dipping into low sec for some different ore, going gas huffing and whatnot. I think the main reason why I left the game at the time was because of the fact that I didn't really have anyone to play with. And when you don't have anyone to play with, sitting there shooting a rock for 5 hours is really fucking boring. Just fact of the matter, it's boring. When you're sitting out there with 20 people, chit-chatting, whether it be in Discord comms or in fleet chat or whatever, you get to meet these people, you get to have these experiences, and especially living out in Null, we have these big events that, we all need to go work together to defend our, structure. And it's just something that wouldn't happen when you're a solo player. It's content that doesn't exist if you don't join a corp, basically. And it's so much fun content. So, had I not done what I did, I would have never gotten into a big fight, and that's sad.
How important is being self-sufficient out here?
As much as we can do ourselves, obviously there's, especially with the rebalancing of nullsec ores that I mentioned earlier, it's pretty hard to be 100% self-sufficient nowadays, but with as much as we have access to nearby, like to get as much as we can.
Do you primarily mine, or do you also manufacture?
Yeah, so I don't really do much of any sort of manufacturing stuff. I produce mining crystals for my mining fleet, but that's about it. The part that I really enjoy about the game and about this corporation specifically is kind of the resource gathering and being able to kind of be part of that supply chain of, I'm gathering these resources and then selling them to the manufacturers who are then manufacturing them into stuff that we can use. I try to keep as much of what we mine in pocket on market down here for us as I can. Obviously, we have limited numbers of manufacturers, so there are some things that, if I mine 50 million pyrite, it's going to take us a little while to go through that. So some of it's getting exported for my own personal finances, but the vast majority of it I try to keep nearby.
What exactly are you mining for?
Yeah, it's a weird little balancing act, and each different material has its own reasonable quantity to have. We don't need 100 million of the most expensive moon goo in pocket because it's just not going to get used that frequently, whereas the really cheap stuff, the pyrite, the mexilon, some of the cheaper R4 moon goos, those are more important to keep in large quantities because they get used a lot more frequently, and so a lot of it ends up being a bit of a balancing act between how much we need around and how much we'll actually sell. how much will actually move through our manufacturing process.
How long have you been a member of the Sleep Reapers?
I've been here since, I think, like October, so probably about 6 months, 8 months, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So you're a fairly senior member of the relatively new alliance.
There are definitely people who have been here much longer than me, but I'm getting to that point for sure. It's always a hesitating moment being the new guy on the block and finally saying, like, yeah, I'm one of the senior members.
How did you find out about the Sleep Reapers?
I'm pretty sure I found them on Reddit. I'm pretty sure I was hunting around for stuff on the Eve Jobs subreddit, and I didn't really know what I was looking for other than I was looking for Nullsec, and I wasn't a super big fan of being a part of the big blocks. And so other than that, I didn't really have much in the way of criteria. So one of the recruiters reached out to me, and I ended up coming down and chatting with him and seeing how everything was. And I think this has been a fantastic place to be. I couldn't imagine going to any other corps.
Would you consider the Rorqual a top dog mining ship?
I mean, that's kind of a weird question because of how mining is right now. Yes, it is like the biggest industrial mining ship. It doesn't actually mine as fast as some of the other ships do. Like a maxed out Hulk with Rorqual boosts will outmine a Rorqual. It's more for those boosts and being like a fleet support ship. So it has the ability to boost and compress ore, and it has a large hangar so it can hold stuff, and obviously defense, it's very good for that. It does mine very quickly, but if you're going comparisons, a maxed out Hulk with B-type crystals will outmine it. So it's more for the utility than anything else. So it's all command bursts. You can see like every minute it'll pulse out that big giant blue bubble around it. That's the boosts going out. There are a bunch of different types of command bursts, but the ones that are important for mining there's one that gives you range on your mining lasers. There's one that gives all of the miners a decreased cycle time for their mining lasers. And then there's one that you don't see used super often, which lowers the volatility of mining crystals, meaning they break less frequently. But most of the time people don't use that one. Yeah, these, so the Rorqual can use excavator mining drones, which are the very special mining drones. And those are the ones that mine like crazy. Because it can't mine, the same way that a Hulk can. It can't put mining lasers on and stuff. It's all drone mining. I do wish that the excavators were a bit more, interesting to use. They're just kind of like regular drones. Fighters are a lot more interesting. The biggest problem with these drones is how slow they are. If the Rorqual isn't sitting like right on top of the rock, there's basically no point even putting them out. Like you can see how slow they travel. With all of the tools given to the Rorqual, it is one of the tankiest capitals in the game. I mean, Supers and Titans are obviously gigantic and have a fuckload of EHP, but Rorquals are very tanky. Well, these are the light drones. These are the real zippy ones. But the industrial core gives you some really massive bonuses to drones, including damage and drone speed and all that good stuff.
If you don't mind me asking, what is your current fitting?
I've learned about this game is that because of how it's kind of set up where, any knowledge that I have gives me an advantage over you, And so because of that, all the information on the web is just wildly outdated or just not accurate or not reliable. Because, if I'm trying to figure out how should I properly fly a super carrier, who's gonna actually write a guide and publish it to tell me how to fly my gigantic ship? Well, they want to kill my gigantic ship. I don't, I'll tell you how to fly a venture any day of the week. I'll give you all the tips and tricks. You want to fly a barge, I'll tell you exactly how to do it, But when it comes to the Rorqual, like, I'm not going to tell you what my fit is necessarily. I'm not going to tell, I don't need you to know that information.
Is a Rorqual a viable ship for PvP?
Obviously, there's like meme fleets with Rorquals and stuff, PvP Rorquals and whatnot, but for the most part, dreads and I don't even. It might even be better than a carrier. Carriers are kind of in a really rough spot right now. So carriers specifically don't really have anything comparable. Maybe like drone boats and stuff, but the way fighters work, I'd say don't really compare. I think what you might be thinking of is Marauders, which are the mini dreadnoughts, basically. Why undock a dread when you could just undock a Marauder for, a quarter of the price? I fully expect them to fix it at some point. It's just a matter of when. In my experience, they do generally try to fix things that people are complaining about, and this is certainly a big thing that people have been complaining quite a bit about. It's just a matter of how long it takes them to actually do it. That doesn't talking about reworking the role of what a carrier is, because that's kind of the part that it's missing. Is it doesn't really fall into. There isn't really a point to undocking a carrier. You could just undock a bunch of subcaps. You could undock dreads instead. Carriers, the fighters do not enough for what they are. You can defang them super easily. They're in a rough spot. Supers are a different story. Supers are very good. Super carriers can use as opposed to the light fighters that regular carriers use. Fighters are a anti-capital and anti-structure weapon. They suck at hitting anything smaller than a capital ship, but they will maul a capital ship to pieces. It's a shield booster that bumps your shield up. And so dreadnoughts, the Rorqual is kind of a pseudo dreadnought because it has the siege module. It's just the same general concept as the dreads. And so one of the things that the siege module gives you is massively increased local repairs. So these shield boosters can rep me insane amounts. However, I cannot receive remote assistance, so you could not boost my shield, but I can boost my shield a lot. And that's kind of the same way that dreadnoughts work. And fixes as well.
How's the money out here in Nullsec mining?
So they reworked all of the ore stuff not too long ago. I'd say within probably about a year or so, but don't quote me on that. And essentially what they tried to do was rebalance it so that each region had its own kind of ores and minerals that were unique to it, and so no one region could be self-sufficient. And so things like tritanium, which are obviously super important for basically everything, got completely removed from Nullsec and mostly from Lowsec, I believe, too. And so pretty much one of the only ways to get it is HighSec at the moment. And so these rocks, this is just anomaly rocks. These are pretty bottom of the barrel as far as Nullsec ore goes. Realistically, ore out here isn't wildly valuable unless you're mining the specialty stuff like moon goo or marcoxit. But it's not terrible money.
How long does it take to clear an area?
So this one is kind of small because the index in this system isn't super great. So this one would probably take me, I don't know, probably 30 minutes to an hour or so to clear. The bigger ones, some of the moons that pop, we can sit on for 4, 5, 6 hours.
Where do you dock such an enormous ship?
So it gets a little weird because freighters and jump freighters are like technically capital ships, but they can dock anywhere. So we're gonna pretend those don't exist for a minute. Capital ships as far as I'm aware, can only dock in Fortizers and Keepstars. The Rorqual gets one exception as the industrial ship, and it can also dock in Tataras as well, which is the reprocessing facility.
Are rats a problem out here while mining?
It kind of depends on the rats. Frankly, I don't really know a whole lot about rats and like the intricacies of their mechanics and whatnot. But yes, there are some rats that you can find like rat mining fleets that'll come out here and mine stuff, and they have haulers and everything. And unless you have bad standing with the faction, they'll just be neutral to you and they won't bother you. But if you have bad standing with them, or if you shoot any of them, they will call in a full response fleet with like Logi and Tackle and Ewar and like fuck your shit up. For what I understand, for the most part, they are actually going from place to place. Those mining rats that I was talking about, those will, like, the haulers will warp in and pick up ore and then warp off to like a nearby celestial, and you can combat scan them down. There are certainly plenty of rats that do that, but they've at least upped the AI on some of them, especially the diamond rats and those fleet rats and stuff. They're not too stupid. No, I'd say the vast majority of NPCs are really stupid and easy. Most of the time they don't scram you. Sometimes they won't even web you or anything. So these types of fleets, I mean, even something this size, like you could do this in an Ishtar if you really wanted to. But there are some, like those diamond rat fleets, like those mining fleet rats, those are a bit more on the scale of like a PvP fleet. It's not exactly the same, obviously, but it's more comparable. Because those will use Ewar, those will use Logi and rep each other, and those will, scram you and everything. The bonuses of this ship is because you don't actually ever have to really worry about drones, because you can hold so many. The Durbe is like 8,000 M3, I think. 8,800 M3. The heavies are 50, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or no, I'm sorry, the heavies are 25. The excavator mining drones are gigantic. In my drone bay right now, those are 5,500. Those 5 drones are 5,500. So, those are the vast majority of my drone bay. But I think I did the math. If you emptied out the drone bay and only put light drones in it, which only take up 5 cubic meters, I'm pretty sure I came up with the number of like 1,750 drones or something.
Oh my god.
As a grand total of the number of light drones you could jam inside of a Rorqual. With my current skills, which are not quite maxed, I think it's like 60 kilometers-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. This thing has, with my current fit, I think it's like 2.2 million each, 2.08 mil. So, these rats are never going to break my tank thing. And even if they got even close, I could hit this one button, and magically, I didn't take any damage anymore.
What about capsuleers?
I mean, we get people popping in, about as regularly as anybody else. We've had some issues with the neighbors and whatnot, but it is a very defensible area, and our leadership is, as much as he likes to complain about it, he's a marvelous diplomat, and so we have good relations with the majority of the people around us. So most passing through is just kind of small gang stuff, and typically we'll try to push them out.
And what about the big block alliances?
Well, I have recently. I got dropped by goons in one of our nearby systems. About 60 bombers. That was a fun time. But other than that, not really. I mean, you get the occasional passerby, like I said, but nothing too major. From what I understand, neither side is particularly interested in taking over. So, as long as that remains true, we don't really have any major concerns.
Do you think that although the agreement to allow smaller alliances to exist in the Southeast was dissolved in February, it is still considered to be beneficial for big blocks to still honor this ideal?
I've heard a couple of different reasonings and rationales, and that rationale is by far my favorite. I love to think that that's the reasoning, and I don't have any reason to believe otherwise. I've also heard stories about how, if one decides to push into this territory, that will be seen as an offensive maneuver by the other, which will then cause them to retaliate. I've also heard that there's just nothing really here of value, and so neither one of them is interested in it. So realistically, I don't know what the actual story is, but either way, it hasn't been a super big problem as of yet.
I met someone new to the game whose only goal is to fly a capital ship.
Yeah, my only caveat with that stuff is I always tell people obviously you're more than welcome to do whatever the hell you want with your money, either in-game or IRL, my one thing is just make sure you're skilling into some shit you're actually going to use before you drop $100 on it or something. Because I know people who have dropped, there are jokes about people skill injecting into Titans, and while I'm sure it's a joke, I'm also sure it has happened. And I mean, if you drop $4,000 to fly a Titan and then immediately get it blown up because you don't know what you're doing, that's not a good day. I would highly recommend against doing that. Anything you can do in a big ship, you can do perfectly fine in a subcap. Definitely. Also, you can't dock it in anything but a keep star. So unless you have access to a keep star, I would extra recommend against it. I think that's kind of the biggest error I see from newer players is just, going too ham too fast and not understanding the basics, right? If you don't understand how to fight in, I'd say, a cruiser, then you definitely should not be trying to fight in anything bigger than that. Losing a $10 million cruiser is no big deal. Losing a $2 billion Black Ops battleship is a really fucking big deal. Well, and to be completely fair, there's a lot of the, the mentality of the whole bigger is better thing, which I think comes from a lot of other games where that's kind of the same, or where that's kind of the idea. A lot of space games, you start out in the shitty little cheap ship, and then you work your way up until you get into the big giant ship, right? But EVE is not that kind of game. You can do a whole lot in a cheap little shitty frigate. Well, and the funny part about it is, because of how the gameplay mechanics work, a lot of the times these bigger ships struggle to damage smaller ships. If I'm in a dreadnought and I have a interceptor circling me at 4,000 kilometers a second, or sorry, 4 kilometers a second, I can't really do anything about it. The only thing I can do is ping in the Discord. I can't shoot him. I can't stop him from doing this. I will never kill him, The only thing I can do about it is ping in Discord and hope someone can come help me. Or alternatively, not have been in that situation in the first place.
How important are comms in New Eden for a Nullsec miner?
I would say it's less important at the lower tiers, but yeah, when you're talking about big fights, when you're talking about comms for stuff, when you're talking about, God forbid, you're tackled in a Titan or something, that's a voice comms kind of moment. Lots of times when I'm mining, I'll sit with my girlfriend and watch movies or TV and stuff. But as soon as the second something happens, actually a joke in our Discord that if I'm in the Discord call, something bad is happening. I've genuinely had someone join the Discord call because they saw me in it, and it was is something what's going on? Some people even AFK and go do work and stuff if they work from home. That's all I hear is have a rap of being easily hunted.